in Europe indicate, and some have said this, that Islam in some of its forms could be hazardous to people's health. But in Australia, it is Muslims who are declaring they're the ones who need safe spaces. A group called the Islamic Council of Victoria, which says it represents 200,000 Muslims in Australia, is calling on the government there to fund a series of safe spaces where they say Muslims can safely express, this is a quote, inflammatory views that would cause trouble if voiced publicly. This is part of the de-radicalization process. Blair Amani is the executive director of Equality for Her. She's an American Muslim. She said safe spaces would be a good idea here. Blair Amani joins us tonight. So, Blair, what exactly would a safe space for Muslims look like? What does that mean exactly?
Well, first, I think we need to start by understanding that everybody kind of misunderstands what a safe space means. And so for me today, I'm talking about safe spaces being somewhere where you can be who you are without fear of being surveilled, having violence committed against you, or being harassed. And I think it's a good idea to have everywhere. America was built on the idea that we could express our religious freedoms, that we can have free speech. I know that's something that you very much believe in.
Yes.
And I think it's, you know, a necessary thing. And we're talking about safe spaces for Muslims. We need to recognize that we've been surveilled for a very long time. I converted to Islam 2 years ago, but for folks who have been Muslim and living in America, it's a crisis for them because, you know, you're being surveilled, you're being watched, and children are being affected.
We may have to stop you there. Why do you think law enforcement agencies would put Muslims under surveillance?
Well, obviously because of the, you know, the counterterrorism efforts. But when...
No, but what is, I'm sorry, what is that? Why would there be counterterrorism efforts aimed at Muslims?
Come on, Tucker, you're a smart guy. You know why that is.
I don't know. I'm a man who asks questions, and I'm asking a question about the statement you just made. What's the answer?
Absolutely. Well, there are, you know, acts of terror committed in the name of Allah that do not, you know, reflect the Muslim community. However, there is this,
well,
you know...
they may or they may not, but you'll concede this is not entirely random. It's not that the U.S. government or police departments are just, like, looking for some religious group to persecute, or is that what you're saying?
I am saying that, you know, the United States government has been in the business of doing that for quite a long time.
So why don't they do it to the Amish? Wait, hold on a second. Why don't they do it to the Amish, or why don't they do it to Hasidic Jews? I mean, they're a set-apart community, speak a different language, not assimilated, but I don't see a lot of terror attacks committed by those groups. Have you?
It's not profitable right now to be, you know, speaking against these other groups. Right now, it's very profitable to be speaking against Muslims because it's, you know, feeding into this wartime efforts. More cells.
Okay, but look, I mean, we can debate the details here, but I think it's important to acknowledge a baseline, and that is that there have been an awful lot of attacks where actual people died in the United States and in Europe, committed by people saying really clearly we're acting in the name of Islam. And other Muslims say, you don't act in my name and you're perverting our religion or whatever. But there's still people who have killed a lot of other people in the name of Islam. So it's not like some mass fantasy that law enforcement is acting out of. This is a real thing, and I don't understand why groups like yours won't acknowledge the reality of that, because it is there, it's true.
I don't understand why other groups won't acknowledge that violence isn't something that's exclusive to the Muslim community.
No one's saying
not
that.
Exclusive to Islam, it's not exclusive to, you know, my religion, and so, which is Islam, but we see people being targeted in a way that's extremely unfair. And we also have this rise of white supremacist and, you know, quote, alt-right, you know, violence that's being committed.
Oh, spare me, that's too dumb.
I mean, happening.
No, you know
we
what, actually,
can't ignore that it's happening, Tucker.
Look, if you're reading only Salon all day, maybe you've been convinced of that, but the truth is there are hard numbers kept by the U.S. government, maybe they run on this plot too, that show exactly the number of people who died and how in terror attacks in the United States. And the truth is there's no comparison. There actually is a problem with people self-identifying as Muslims murdering other people in the name of Islam. I don't think you're implicated in that. I'm not saying you are. But I just don't know why you're not more upset at them. I'm an Episcopalian. If they're Episcopalians setting off bombs in the name of...
I'm not upset, Tucker.
Okay, but what you're doing is coming on and lecturing the U.S. government for being racist and mean to Muslims. Why don't you say, well, there's a real problem in our community. We're trying to do something about it, but maybe they should stop, like, surveilling us so much. That would be a fair thing to say, but instead it's like it's always the fault of the larger society, and that just, you know what, that's just silly.
Fair.
You see what I mean?
Well,
Fair?
I think, you know, it's ridiculous that the idea that we can't have those safe spaces, like we were saying, is something that's out of the question. The truth is that, you know, Muslims are being targeted in ways, and truly, there are other communities that need safe spaces, which includes the LGBTQ community, the black community. Okay. There needs to be spaces where people are
I'm not sure you're not to speak
harassed.
on their behalf too, but I feel like I'm harassed a lot online. Whatever. I mean, I guess we're all victims here. But here's the question: what would Muslims say in safe spaces that they wouldn't say in public? Do you think?
Well, I don't speak for all Muslims, and I actually am a black queer woman in addition to being a Muslim. So from my own experience, when I go to the airport and I go to untangle, a pair of headphones and I get, visited by somebody from TSA, it's that type of thing. We have to look at the fact that it's not necessarily inflammatory things, it's the perception.
In the safe space? No, this is a sincere question, though. You're asking for someone, not you, I guess, to pay for a safe space where people can say whatever they want. And I want examples of the kind of things that Muslims believe they could only say in a so-called safe space and could not say, for example, on this show or on a street corner. Like, what kinds of things would they be saying in these safe spaces?
I don't think it's necessarily something that they can't say elsewhere, but it's, spaces have internal community dialogues to be able to hash things out, to be able to have these complicated discussions. And something else that, I really want to be out in the forefront that the Islamic Council of Victoria has also done in collaboration with the Board of Imams is speaking out against violence against women. These type of, internal community dialogues acknowledging that there's an issue of violence against women and that, there needs to be
in the Muslim community, there's a problem.
In all communities, there is an issue of violence against women.
Have you noticed that all identity politics kind of converges in the end? So it's not just about Muslims; it's about the LGBT community. It's about black. It's like, at some point.
Well, some of us, like myself, exist in all of those communities. It's not identity politics when it's your life.
But do you also? It's okay. But don't you also think that primarily you're an American? Aren't we all first and foremost Americans?
I'm black first.
End of conversation. Thanks, Blair.
Director Comey, the meeting in the Oval Office where he made the request about Mike Flynn, was that the only time he asked you to hopefully let it go?
Yes.
And in that meeting, as you understood it, he was asking not about the general Russia investigation. He was asking very specifically about the jeopardy that Flynn was in himself.
That's how I understood it, yes, sir.
And as you perceived it, while it was a request that you hoped you did away with it, you perceived it as an order, given his position, the setting, and the like, and some of the circumstances.
Yes.
At the time, did you say anything to the president about that is not an appropriate request, or did you tell the White House counsel that is not an appropriate request? Someone needs to go tell the president that he can't do these things?
I didn't, no.
Okay. Why?
I don't know. I think, as I said earlier, I think the circumstances were such that I was a bit stunned and didn't have the presence of mind. And I don't know, I don't want to make you sound like I'm Captain Courageous. I don't know whether even if I had the presence of mind, I would have said to the president, sir, that's wrong. I don't know whether I would have. Okay. But in the moment, it didn't come to my mind. What came to my mind is be careful what you say. And so I said, I agree, Flynn is a good guy.
So on the cloud, we keep talking about this cloud. You perceive the cloud to be the Russian investigation in general.
Yes, sir.
Right? But the specific ask was that you would tell the American people what you had already told him, what you had already told the leaders of Congress, both Democrats and Republicans, that he was not personally under investigation.
Yes, sir.
That's how he was asking you to do what you have done here today.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. And again, at that setting, did you say to the president that it would be inappropriate for you to do so and then talk to the White House counsel or anybody so hopefully they would talk to him and tell him that he couldn't do this?
First time I said, I'll see what we can do. Second time, I explained how it should work, that the White House counsel should contact the Deputy Attorney General.
You told him
the president said, okay, I think that's what I'll do.
And just to be clear, for you to make a public statement that he was not under investigation would not have been illegal, but you felt it made no sense because it could potentially create a duty to correct if circumstances changed.
Yes, sir. We wrestled with it before my testimony where I confirmed that there was an investigation. And there were two primary concerns. One was it creates a duty to correct, which I've lived before, and you want to be very careful about doing that. And second, it's a slippery slope because if we say the president and the vice president aren't under investigation, what's the principled basis for stopping? Okay. And so the leadership at Justice, Acting Attorney General Bente, said you're not going to do that.
Now, on March 30th, during the phone call about General Flynn, you said he abruptly shifted and brought up something that you call, quote unquote, the McCabe thing. Specifically, the McCabe thing, as you understood it, was that McCabe's wife had received campaign money from what I assume means Terry McAuliffe.
Yes, sir. That
was very close to the Clintons. And so why had the president at any point in time expressed to you concern, opposition, potential opposition to McCabe? I don't like this guy because he got money from someone that's close to Clinton.
He had asked me during previous conversations about Andy McCabe. And said, in essence, how's he going to be with me as president? I was pretty rough on him on the campaign trail.
He was rough on McCabe?
he was rough, by his own account, he said he was rough on McCabe and Mrs. McCabe on the campaign trail. How's he going to be? And I assured the president, Andy is a total pro. No issue at all. You got to know the people of the FBI. They are not.
So then the president turns to you and says, remember, I never brought up the McCabe thing because you said he was a good guy. Did you perceive that to be a statement that I took care of you? I didn't do something because you told me he was a good guy. So now, I'm asking you potentially for something in return. Is that how you perceived it?
I wasn't sure what to make of it, honestly. That's possible, but it was so out of context that I didn't have a clear view of what it was.
Now, on a number of occasions here, you bring up, let's talk now about the general Russia investigation, okay? In page 6 of your testimony, you say, the first thing you say is, he asked what we could do to, quote unquote, lift the cloud, the general Russia investigation, and you responded that we were investigating the matter as quickly as we could and that there would be great benefit if we didn't find anything to having done the work well. And he agreed. He reemphasized the problems it was causing him, but he agreed. So in essence, the president agreed with your statement that it would be great if we could have an investigation, all the facts came out, and we found nothing. So he agreed that that would be ideal, but this cloud is still messing up my ability to do the rest of my agenda. Is that an accurate assessment of it?
Yes, sir. He actually went farther than that. He said, and if some of my satellites did something wrong, it'd be good to find that out.
Well, that's the second part, and that is the satellites. He said if one of my satellites, I imagine by that he meant some of the other people surrounding his campaign did something wrong, it would be great to know that as well.
Yes, sir. That's what he said.
So are those the only two instances in which that sort of back and forth happened, where the president was basically saying, and I'm paraphrasing here, it's okay, do the Russia investigation. I hope it all comes out. I have nothing to do with anything Russia. It'd be great if it all came out, if people around me were doing things that were wrong.
Yes, as I recorded it accurately there, that was the sentiment he was expressing. Yes, sir.
So what it bears it comes down to is the president has asked three things of you. He asked for your loyalty, and you said you would be loyally honest.
Honestly loyal.
Honestly loyal. He asked you on one occasion to let the Mike Flynn thing go because he was a good guy. By the way, you're aware that he said the exact same thing in the press the next day. He's a good guy, he's been treated unfairly, et cetera, et cetera. So I imagine your FBI agents read that.
I'm sure they did.
The president's wishes were known to them, certainly by the next day when he had a press conference with the prime minister. Going back, the three requests were, number one, be loyal. Number two, let the Mike Flynn thing go. He's a good guy. He's been treated unfairly. And number three, can you please tell the American people what these leaders in Congress already know, what you already know, what you've told me 3 times, that I'm not personally under investigation?
Those are the 3 things he asked. Yes, sir.
This investigation is full of leaks left and right. I mean, we've learned more from the newspapers sometimes than we do from our open hearings, for sure. Do you ever wonder why, of all the things in this investigation, the only thing that's never been leaked is the fact that the president was not personally under investigation, despite the fact that both Democrats and Republicans and the leadership of Congress knew that and have known that for weeks?
I don't know. I find matters that are briefed to the Gang of 8 are pretty tightly held, in my experience.
Finally, who are those senior leaders at the FBI that you shared these conversations with?
As I said in response to Senator Feinstein's question, Deputy Director, my Chief of Staff, General Counsel, the Deputy Director's Chief Counsel, and then more often than not, the number 3 person at the FBI who's the Associate Deputy Director, and then quite often the head of the National Security Branch.